the most important relationship you'll ever have is with your child.
Mm.
And traditionally, there are three types of parenting styles. One is authoritarian, one is authoritative, and one is permissive.
Correct.
Resilience is, I think, the most important human trait. We're seeing it with the mental health concerns that are rising. But for the most part, as human beings, our feelings are so fleeting,
Yeah.
right? Your kid doesn't want to do something, you teach them how to work through it. A good day all the time.
Yeah.
They're not expected to be in control all the
Yeah.
time, but you are expected to be the adult all the time.
Mama, mama,
Please stop. Welcome to the Mother Lords.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Mother Lords. If you're new here, we're a podcast where we talk about the very real and unfiltered truth about parenting. Three mums who are having honest conversations about what's really happening in our houses. I'm Alicia. I have a 5-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy. And with me are my co-hosts.
I'm Ria, and I have two girls who are 5 and 2.
And I'm Hina. I have twin boys who are 5.5. And today we have with us someone who's going to, hopefully by the end of this episode, make all our parenting journeys a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable. Pia Marker, who has 20 plus years of experience of working with families. She's got a master's of, working with children with special needs. And she works with families on things like communication, discipline, just making our parenting journeys a lot better and a lot more fruitful. So thank you so much, Pia,
Thank you for
being
having me.
here. Can you please tell our listeners about, what you do, how you work with families, your experience that has brought you here?
Sure. So my journey started in 1997 as a special needs teacher. And when I graduated, I found myself in the position of a school principal, actually the founding school principal of Bombay's first school for children with learning disabilities. When the whole world was working towards inclusion, we decided to start a school for children with learning disabilities because I feel in a city like ours where, we're so overpopulated, basic education sometimes is a struggle and special education is not really prioritized. So we started a very niche school in 2003 and it did really, really well. I was at the helm as a principal for about 20 years. I worked through 2 babies, 2 pregnancies. My son is 14, my daughter's 12 right now. And somewhere around, COVID, I realized or I enjoyed so much of being at home and working from home with them that it was very hard to go back to a full-time job. So I went back to school and I got myself certified as a parent coach from a university abroad. And I launched my own private practice because I've worked with families for the last 20 odd years. And I realized that when parents are in tune with what their children need, the success is phenomenal. So just shifted my focus from helping children to helping parents. And I think that's far more valuable because when the parents actually are, on board with what their children need, they're very aware of what they need. It's very easy to kind of get our child to where we want them to be. And I have enjoyed my parenting journey most. I love being a mom more than anything else. You ask me to do anything, and if I have to choose that over being a mom or being with my kids will win hands down each time. And that's because I always say I've got lovely children. I've been blessed with the best kids. But I think a lot of it comes from also your perspective and your ability to accept them wholly for who they are. And the minute you accept them, the good, bad, the ugly, the way you want to be accepted, parenting is a fun journey. You enjoy it. You don't take things personally. Of course, you get upset. Of course, you discipline. You do all those things. But I think that parenting is the only relationship that's going to last you a lifetime. If you think about it, your child is going to be a child for a short period of time. You are going to be a parent forever. So that is the one relationship I feel you need to invest in because it has to be fulfilling. It has to be fun. And it goes through different phases and stages from toddlers to teens to being a parent of an adult to being a grandmother, mother-in-law, whatever it may be, you are still always the parent. So the minute you understand what parenting is all about, it becomes more fulfilling it becomes a very enriching experience. And that's my goal, to give as many parents as I can that experience of joy.
That just gave me
Yeah.
I
goosebumps.
feel like
So
clapping.
happy.
That was amazing.
Like I'm tearing
It's
up over
true.
here.
I
Yeah.
know it's such a, the way you put it, it's actually so true. You're parent for life once you become a parent.
Always.
It's
Our
like
parents
someone-
are still parenting us, if you
Yeah.
think about it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think what
Yeah.
changes is that with every stage of parenting, you need to understand the phase that your child is at.
Mm.
And you need to move with that. Because when you are the parent of an adult, there are certain boundaries you don't cross in terms of, the way they are living their lives, the way they are parenting their children. Because it's all about, then you bring in conflict. It's a way you do that. And in fact, my entire range or experience right now as a parent coach for the last 4 years when I've been doing this is, most recently, I had a parent who reached out to me on my social media and said, I don't know if you can help me or not. And my first question is typically, with school, how old is your child? The typical questions, what are you
Yeah,
struggling
yeah.
with? And she's like, he's 33. And I told my husband, I'm taking this on just to know,
Yeah.
what this is all about. And honestly, I mean, when I had that session with her, I think I learned a lot more, because that's when it struck me that you're a parent for life, right? Because
Yeah.
at 33, you can't, there's only that much you can do to kind of influence your grown child about
Yeah.
whether they're making the right choice in terms of life partner, job, how they manage themselves, their lives, everything, right? So you've got to still be the parent, but without kind of running their lives like you did when they were toddlers or teens.
You've got to
So
change.
I think you've got to change. Parenting is
Correct.
so dynamic. We need to change.
Yeah.
And the minute we learn to embrace each phase of development, the change is not so hard for us and not so painful.
Pia, obviously now you already said that you've worked with recent as, now you worked with somebody with a 33-year-old child. What is the age range of children and families that you work with?
So anyone who is a parent, so there are sometimes new parents, sometimes there are people who are expecting a child, or they are expecting their second child and they don't know how to help their first child prepare for it. So it could be as young as that, or it could be, typically I think most of the parents who come to me are between toddlers and teens, because they are the two most challenging phases of,
Right.
I think, parenting. So a lot of my clients are toddlers or teen parents, but I mean, honestly, it moves up and down, because there are also those who are moving to university.
Mm.
Okay. And parents find it very hard to let go. It's extremely hard to let your child go. It's extremely hard to be sure that you've done everything that your child needs to be able to live away from home. Because I think parents today do so much for their children that you're not sure whether you're empowering them or disabling them. And I think it's only when they're leaving home that you actually start getting nervous and worried that, can my child manage on their own? Will they be able to do their basic chores? Will they be able to manage certain things? So sometimes working with parents where their kids are younger, slightly younger, and helping them develop the skills so that they
Yeah.
can let their child fly without fear. Like, you miss them, but you're not afraid that they'll not be able to manage.
And when you typically work with a family, what is the average duration of a consultation? Is it over the course of a few days, few weeks? How does it work?
So there are sometimes people who come just like for a one-off.
Yeah.
But I would say typically 4 to 6 sessions is where parents actually get a handle on it. Because what
Sure.
happens is that the way I work is there's no one size fits all, because no parent and child is similar.
Correct.
Okay, it's your personality, it's your spouse's personality, it's the child's personality. So once you understand how best to make that dynamic work, it takes, of course, a couple of sessions. And then I give parents strategies. So I will tell them, like, for example, they say, my kid is back answering me. So, okay, your child says this, what do you say? Or what do you do? And then you give them different ways of responding rather than reacting. And then they try it. They come back and say, you know what, it didn't work. But when I did this, this worked. And it helps you understand the family dynamic better. And then by the time you reach 4 to 6 sessions, it's like a swimming lesson, right? By the
Yeah.
time, you take the float off, the parent is good to go. And then sometimes it's on a maintenance, sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't need to. So it's very, very family dependent. I think the longest I've taken with a family was about 12 weeks, but there the child was
Wow.
adopted. And the child had a diagnosis of a learning disability and attention deficit. And then when the parents told him that he was adopted, he was about 9 years old. he anyway had his behavior challenges because of his ADHD or because of his learning disability. He started telling the mother, "You can't tell me what to do. You're not my mom. I'm not going to listen to you. You're not my mom." So it became a little bit hard for her to kind of discipline or hard for her to kind of get through to him. So that took us a little bit longer. But I think in 12 weeks, which is about 3 months, she got through to him. And I haven't seen her in a year.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
And you said that you've been doing, specifically being a parenting coach for the last 4 years, right? Have you seen any sort of,
Evolution.
evolution? Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Pardon my mom brain. But yes, evolution in, how people received going to a parenting coach 4 years ago as opposed to now. Do you think that there is stigma around thinking that, oh, if I go to a parenting coach, I'm not a good parent or I'm a bit of a failure?
So, I feel that human nature is such that it's very easy to kind of place blame on something outside of yourself. So, when a child is having a problem, there is not a parent in the world who will not seek help for the child. You will take your child to be fixed. You're willing to take your child to every therapist, you're willing to take your child to every class, but it's very hard to acknowledge it's not my child who needs the help, it's me who needs the tweaking. So, in fact, initially, and I don't see children at all, I only work with parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Because as a professional, I know I can get through to the child and I can work with the child, but the idea is to empower parents to be able to have that kind of bond with their child or be able to have that communication with their child where they're able to work together in synergy. So I don't see children, I see the parent. And initially when I launched my practice, there was a parent who called me and I gave them a time which was like 9 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, "But my kid's in school." And I'm like, "I don't need to see the child, I need to see you." And she literally said, "Are you trying to say I'm the problem?" And she banged the phone down. So it was, it takes a while. And I think it takes different people. And then maybe 6 months later, she did come back to me because the school brought something up. So I think it's different approaches, different
Yeah.
things. But I just feel that, especially, like I said, the most important relationship you'll ever have is with your child. It's important to invest in it. Sometimes it's important to just know I'm on the right track. You don't have to go to somebody because there's a problem.
Yeah.
Things are so different. And you go to somebody who's seeing multiple parents or has a vast range of experience, you may get some insights from there, right? It's not about you being a bad parent at
Correct,
all. In
yeah.
fact, I feel
Yeah.
seeking help makes you a good parent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something I always remember as a kid was, and I do it now with my kids, my mom never hesitated to apologize to us if she said something or did something that she knew was maybe wrong or we felt bad. She would always come and say, "I'm really sorry, if you felt bad or if something that I did upset you." And she would give us a hug. And that's one memory that's always stuck with me is she never held
And
back.
it's really funny you say that because the one memory that stuck with me was that my parents never apologized. They were always right no matter what. And even if they were wrong, their way of apology was not to say sorry, I'm wrong. It was just to come and give you a hug and then be normal and that everything is okay. So you know that it's been fine. And I saw myself behaving like that with my kids as well. Till my husband caught it and he made me conscious of it. And I could have gotten defensive. I mean, I'm sure you don't realize that you're doing it.
Of course.
But it's nice that we now have the tools and we have people such as yourself to help us because you see out there, right? Like on social media and stuff, there are so many different ways to parent now. There's gentle parenting, permissive parenting, disciplinary parenting. I don't think anyone had any idea of things back in the day, but now there's too much information. So what are all these ways of parenting and how do they work?
Yeah.
So honestly, I think there are just labels
Okay.
or I think different types of people who parent in different ways. But typically and traditionally, there are 3 types of parenting styles. One is authoritarian, one is authoritative, and one is permissive. Authoritarian is like a dictatorship, my way or the highway. And, the parent is in control, the parent is the authority, and the child just needs to follow suit. Permissive parenting is where the child takes control, right? The parent is like, okay, whatever you want, however you want to do, they take the lead from the child. Authoritative parenting is the balance. It's where you are disciplinarian as well as warm. It's where you sometimes let your child take the lead. It's sometimes you take the lead. It's sometimes you work together collaboratively. It's harder to do. Obviously, it's harder to do because it requires a lot more self-awareness as a parent, self-control as a parent, understanding where to give in, where to pull back. I mean, it is something, but I think the minute we all awaken from the inside and we understand who we are and we accept, okay, this is me, I'm short-tempered. This is me, I'm not the most patient, I'm not the most zen. Yes, some mothers are super in control. I'm not one of those. That's fine. Then you learn how to work with who you are. And then automatically you'll reach that path. And, under this umbrella, there are offshoots. There is helicopter parenting. There's snow plowing parenting.
Snow plowing.
So snow plowing parenting is where you remove hurdles from along your child's way. Today, parents, obviously everybody has access, everybody has privilege, everybody has the ways of saying, you don't like this, I'll remove it. You don't like this, I'll remove it. And what that does is you're removing obstacles along your child's way. And that's not good because we learn from obstacles. We learn from problems. We learn.
Not letting the child deal with it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you push your child into a problem and say, deal with it.
Yeah.
Not in the olden days how things used to be. But you can walk by their side and guide them through the obstacles. You can talk them through it. So they learn how to deal with problems because life without problems is not life, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And we've got to equip our child to deal with those things.
Correct.
Resilience is, I think, the most important human trait. We're seeing it with the mental health concerns that are rising. Because why is that happening? Because resilience is a problem. Children are not able to take setback, not able to take failure, not able to bounce back, right? When you fail, you're like, they're not able to bounce back. They're very quick to say, you didn't like this, switch. Let's try another activity. They don't persevere through it. And that's because us as parents have so many options to give our children.
Yeah.
We're not allowing them to work through it. So that is snow plowing parenting, which is the helicopter and the tiger mom and all those are all there.
What if
But
you
yeah.
have two kids with two different personalities and you can from when you were talking, you can see yourself being a snow plowing parent with one and then and then an authoritative parent with the other. But how do you, because it's just like, shh, okay, I'll give you whatever you want, just be quiet.
So honestly, when you said what if you have two children with different personalities, I don't think anyone has two children with the same personality. Okay, it's like it's what keeps life exciting. Is you have I always joke with my daughter. My son at 3 months was sleeping. He was sleeping through the night. I'm like, oh my God, what are people talking about newborns? This is so easy. And I wanted twins. It didn't happen. So I went for a very short age gap. There are 20 months between my kids. And she didn't sleep till, I want to say, as long as God knows how long. And I think the Bobby Brown and all have made so much money off me with, concealer. So there's no such thing. You always will have two different types at home. But you have to respond to them. Now, see if you understand what I mean. Equally, but not the same. You give equal respect. You give equal treatment, you give equal love, but not equal things. And the way will be different. The way each of you interact with each other, you all are friends.
Yeah.
You all may be equally close, but the way you interact with each other will be different. It's based on your personality. It's based on so many different things.
Yeah.
So as long as your child feels secure, loved, equally respected, doesn't matter. You're going to have to handle them differently because they're different people.
So when you talk about authoritarian parenting and being a disciplinarian, but also being warm, what is the sort of mental model in your head? How should you be doing the disciplining? How do you hold your boundaries?
So authoritarian parenting is the one that is the one you should not be doing.
The dictatorship.
The middle one is authoritative.
Authoritative. Okay. So when you're being an authoritative
So
parent.
basically, parents or other people use the words discipline and punishment interchangeably. They are two
Correct.
different things.
So that's what I'm trying to maybe get at.
Punishment is when you are trying to make someone feel bad about what they did. Okay, you're trying to make the person feel bad. You're making the person feel ashamed, and all the negative feelings that come with it. Discipline is where you're using that opportunity to teach your child to make a better decision the next time the same thing presents itself.
So you're giving a consequence? Are you always giving a consequence?
It's not a consequence, really. It's not as simple as, reward and punishment. So what happens is you have to understand what your motivation is when you are working with a child's behavior. Let's say your child has lied to you or your child has stolen something. Okay, now what you could do is you could punish your child, you could humiliate your child, you could make your child feel really terrible about, what they've done. And what is that going to make your child do? You think the child has learned that stealing is wrong, or they've learned that mom finding out is a problem? That's where the line is drawn. So you've got to use that opportunity to ask your child why you did something, what made you do something, understanding the feeling behind the behavior and helping our child work through that. And also understanding that we don't give in to every feeling we have. Okay, right now, this new age parenting is validate every feeling, every feeling is allowed, and every feeling is allowed. But
Yeah.
every feeling should not be how we make decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if you allow your feelings to control your decision making, you're not going to reach your goals.
Correct.
Like, I don't feel like doing this, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't work like that. Okay, why do you not feel like doing it? Is there a real fear? Is it just, and you work through the feeling.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are real feelings that, okay, you need to listen to. But for the most part, as human beings, our feelings are so fleeting,
Yeah.
right? Your kid doesn't want to do something, you teach them how to work through it. And there's a lot of growth that comes from working through fear, working through, feeling unsure about something. On the other side is accomplishment. On the other side is confidence. So it's helping your child work through it.
And what about understanding things? Like, for example, if I'm telling my child, okay, don't bully your younger sister. Is it me calling her a bully and labeling her, and therefore she should feel like we should be aware of words that we are using with our kids?
Because, you said your kids are 5 and 2.
Yeah.
What does the word bully even mean? Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you think of a bully even in a normal social setting, even at an adult level, right? Adults bully each other all the
Yeah.
time as well. So when you look at a bully, what is that? It's actually a social struggle to be in control, to have power, to have somebody listen to you for all the multiple reasons that they are there. So now when your child is dominating their sibling, you have to understand what is it that they want. Do they want control? Do they want that person to listen to them and that person's not listening to them? So then they're using their age or their size to kind of dominate. And that's what you need to understand where that's coming from.
Mm.
The word bully will confuse your child because they don't even know what that means. So you just say that, when you say this to your brother or your sister, it hurts their feelings. They feel bad. Why don't you ask nicely? Or why give them the right words, the right vocabulary to express themselves in healthier ways?
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah, so say this is happening repeatedly, right? And there's always like this
Tussle.
whacking and hitting and being rude and grabbing. Then do you bring in a consequence? Does it help? Maybe sometimes you don't even have the time to give a consequence in the moment. You gotta just walk out the door and leave for school. You say, okay, now I take away TV privileges on the weekend, and that's a consequence 3 days later. Does that help? I mean,
So
what is really helping in this
so
moment?
with very young children, the consequence or the effectiveness of behavior modification are 3 magic C's. It's consistency, contingency, and continuity. So contingency means at the time that behavior occurs, you have to respond in a particular way.
Mm.
So what happens is that we are different in different situations, right? You're out, everybody's looking at you, the child has a meltdown in school, principal's there, and you don't want to seem like this parent who doesn't have it in control. So you will handle it in a particular way.
Mm.
You may handle your child differently when somebody's not there,
Mm.
right? So it's very important for us to be consistent. No
Mm.
matter where we are, no matter who's watching us, when this behavior occurs, this is the way I will respond. And then continuity is with behavior. Behavior changes after many, they say old habits die hard, right? It's not like you tell your child stop and they're going to magically stop. You've got to reinforce it regularly with this in the same manner for your child to understand this is not acceptable. And you don't have to be punitive. You don't have to be harsh. You just have to tell your child stop. You can even go down to their eye level, firmly say no hitting. Use your words. What do you want? You're upset. You're angry. Why don't you take a minute? I'm sitting with you. It's not abandon them and say, go sit in the corner. What we do
Yeah.
is that, go sit in the corner. So you abandon them. You can say, I'm not happy with your behavior. You want to calm down? Do you want to breathe? You're teaching them how to regulate themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're only going to learn what we teach them. if you fly off the handle, when they've flown off the handle, they've learned that that's the only way.
Yeah. So, what you said about telling your child that, okay, take a minute, as opposed to going with your child, that's so true, because we started very early on, and kids can get overwhelmed. They can have emotions. They can have all of these feelings from a very, very young age. There's a little pillow in my room. And the kids kind of know that when they just need to calm down, or when they just need to like get away from whatever it is, or just they're having a really big meltdown or big feeling about something, that they can take either me or my husband, whoever is there, and they get to go and sit on that pillow with us. And like we just chat and we just calm down together. We're all on the bed, I'm on the bed with them, or my husband's on the bed with them. And it's so nice because recently we had a play date and we had some 5 or 6 kids over. And one of my boys, I think, was just getting really overwhelmed. And who knew that, something that we started at like 2 would now at 5.5, he came to me with this little blanket that he likes holding when he needs a minute. And he said, Mama, can I just go to your room? Can we just go to our room? And we went together and he took a few minutes to calm down, and then he was ready to come back.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he needed that. And he recognized that he needed that. It wasn't just, and we never used it as a timeout. It wasn't like, oh, now you need a minute and you need to go and sit on that pillow. It was always one of us accompanying our child with them.
That is so cool. How did that make you feel?
Really good.
Yeah.
That is
Obviously.
amazing.
But it took, like you said, it took years.
It takes years. And the thing is, you cannot underestimate the impact of our actions. Our children are watching us all the time.
Yeah.
And I tell this to parents very regularly that, don't focus so much on saying the right thing or going to the right place or giving the child the right holiday or the right experience. They're going to remember how they felt with you. They're not going to remember whether you took them to the best restaurant or they flew a certain class. Children don't care about those things.
Yeah.
Do they feel safe? Do they feel loved? Do they seek you out when they are feeling low? That's what it is, right? That's what parenting is all about. And I think that's what you've accomplished.
Are you going to be their shoulder to cry on?
Obviously, I mean, this was a great scenario, but there are moments that I do lose my cool, and we all do, right?
Yeah.
With
And
our
you're human.
kids. Right.
Yeah.
But let's just say we have a scenario like that where, like you said, Alicia, we have to get out the door. They're just not putting their shoes on. They're not brushing their teeth. And you lose your cool completely. And you obviously are not the best version of yourself in that moment. How would a parent repair such a situation?
So I think going back to what Alicia said, and this is something that I follow as a parent, and I recommend it to every parent, is to apologize when you lose control. Because you're human, and it's important for your child to see that it is okay to lose control sometimes. We don't expect everyone to be in a perfect state of calm all the time. It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But what's very important is to be able to regulate yourself and come back to a state of calm and to apologize for the way you managed yourself when you were not. So I think it's okay to say, especially the morning routine with very young children, I always tell them that you will have that one child who takes longer. You will have that one child who, so, you can just wake them up 10 minutes earlier. Understand again your children. Like I have 2 kids. My son takes fair amount of time in the morning. He will have his breakfast leisurely. He has to have a bath that lasts a particular period of time. My daughter can go quick and say, okay, you know what? I don't have time. I'm even going to skip a bath. I'm going to go. He will not be able to. So I wake him up 25 minutes earlier than I wake her up. Because earlier what I was doing is I'd wake them up together and then I'd be breathing down his neck. Hurry up. What are you doing? Rush. What are you doing? This is not Sunday. You can't chill. And then by the time he left home and, I dropped him off, it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And I always felt that, oh my God, how was he feeling? I've rushed him out of the house. So now I wake him up 25 minutes earlier and he's ready when she is. And we don't miss the bus. So it's just about understanding that. And in time, children will learn to adjust, to their routines, to themselves, and they'll manage it. So I always recommend that the morning routine, try to let it be least stressful. And I would say that selfishly so that you don't feel horrible when your child is left for the day.
Is there a certain age that kids begin to understand consequences? What is an age appropriate sort of expectation? So yesterday, this has now been happening every day in the evening in my house. My son was like, he's my golden child. Sometimes I say that because he's very easy and he's very sunny. That's his personality. Now, every day in the evening, as soon as he's kind of done, he starts upturning his food and throwing it on the floor. Now, yesterday, I was just done. It was almost 7. Nobody had finished eating. Nobody had had a bath. And 7 is generally when we start getting into bed. So I was losing my cool. And he was like, you can't talk to me like that. And it's not fair that you said that and that whole thing. And I said, just get up from the table. I can't have you here on the table. And normally I tell him, if you're going to throw your food is for eating. You can't throw it. And I very nicely, I put him on the floor. Today I was just angry and I picked him up and I was like, you're done. Leave the table. And he got really upset. And I apologized to him later. But now this is like consistently it's happening and it's not changing. The behavior is not changing at all.
So what is
My
he,
daughter
what is he doing? He's upturning food after he's eaten it. What's left over?
Most of the time, yeah, when he's mostly done, he will upturn it and he will start like spreading his dahi on the table and he'll start throwing food on the floor. And so I know now you're done. But yeah, yesterday I had a strong
So
reaction
now you know
to
this
it.
is happening. How long has this been happening for?
Couple of weeks it's been going.
So now
no,
you
longer,
know-
I think.
Correct. So now, where do you think the problem is?
I don't know, you tell me.
You know it's going to happen. So you have to be 2 steps ahead. So let's say you know your child is almost at the end of his meal. Before he starts giving you all the signals that I'm done,
Done.
which are in the inappropriate,
Yeah.
immature ways, because he's not, you
He's
cannot
not
expect more of a 5-year-old.
2-year-old.
2-year-old, even better. You can't expect that. So you need to actually be in control of the situation where you see he's almost done and you can say, done, give mama the plate.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's it. So you are not giving him anything to throw. So
No.
you have, what have you done? See, why is he throwing? He's done.
yeah.
He's playing now.
Yeah.
He's 2. It's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. Most
Okay,
days
it's very
I
normal.
remember that and
No, so you shouldn't. And while I say it's normal for him to do it, it's not normal for him to be allowed to do it.
Correct.
Right? So there's a line there. So while it's normal, we are saying it's normal for him to, I'm done with my food. Now what do I do with it? Let me feel the textures. Let me play with it. Let me fling it around. Let me see what happens when dahi flops. Does it go splat? I mean, it's so many things. It's an exploratory stage, right? So you need to avoid that. And you can say, are you done? Take the plate away. Give him a toy. And say, let him play. So then he can drop something which is meant to be dropped, which is meant to be manipulated and played with, not food. So you don't allow him to even go down that stage. And if you do that regularly, there will be times when he will start saying done, giving you the plate, and he will ask for a toy. And you have replaced an inappropriate behavior by an appropriate behavior.
But this, you can discipline your kids kindly and sweetly at home. But now when you go out, for example, and the same kind of behavior is happening at a restaurant or around family or
Especially around family.
Especially around family. And then family is judgmental,
Yeah.
right? And you tend to be a lot stricter with your kids when you are around family. So how do you navigate that part?
So, honestly, there are some people who are more permissive with their children when family is watching. Some are
Yeah.
more strict. So the whole key is you're different when people are watching you and you're different behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And that is the message your child is getting.
Oh.
So when I'm in front of mom or dad, I'll do this. When they're not looking, I'll do that. Are you ready for that, for your teenage child to do that?
No,
No.
thanks.
Exactly. So everything that we do, and I tell a lot of parents, some parents say, but my kid's only 4. I'm like, I'm not telling you to set the boundary for the 4-year-old. I'm talking about that 14-year-old. Because if you have not set boundaries, if your child doesn't realize when you say no is no, when you say enough is enough, when your body language says, I don't accept it, if your child ignores all those, they're not going to pay attention as they get older. And it is tougher to discipline when they're older.
Yeah.
So it's important for you to, set those boundaries at home, reinforce them wherever you are. And as far as possible, block out the noise or the feeling of judgment. Because at the end of the day, you are going back with that child and you are living with that child. And family is going to judge you whether you're very sweet and kind. Oh my God, she's so sweet.
Yeah.
Or she's so strict. And you've got to, and when you're a real parent and you're authentic and your child and you have that connect, nobody's going to judge it. And I don't think there's a parent in the world who has not had a child who has behaved badly, has thrown food, has hit somebody, has done something wrong. So what is there to judge? We've all been through that path.
So, Pia, since you are so wise, will you teach us the art of saying no without dealing with the meltdown or without the meltdown that tends to follow, at least
So
with toddlers?
disclaimer, I'm not wise.
You
I'm
you sound very
To
also-
wise.
us, you are.
I am also a parent who learns through my own parenting journey. And I think, like when you started out by saying how to say no without the, the tantrum or the meltdown, I mean, say no because the no is good for your child. Say no because that keeps your child safe. How your child accepts that no, you can't control everything,
Yeah.
right? Imagine you go to a store and tell your husband, I want that bag, and he says no. I mean, he cannot control whether you're going to say, okay, baby, you said no, it's all right, or you storm off, or you say, I'll buy it for myself. I mean, he said no, right? You can't control every variable. So you say no to your child. And I tell every parent, you need to think your no's and your yeses through. It cannot be based on your mood in that moment.
Yeah.
A lot of parents do that, right? So let's say you're jumping on a sofa and you're in a good mood, yeah, jump, it's okay. And suddenly you're in a bad mood, what are you doing? Get off. The kid is confused. Is
Yeah.
this allowed? Is it not allowed? Is it okay? Is it not okay? So we've got to think our no's and our yeses through. Sometimes you've got to say, like I remember when my son was very small, he used to ask me and I'd be like, maybe. And then he'd be like, no, what does that mean, mama? I said, means mama's thinking. Give me a second. Because you say no, and then later you're like, you thought that I was silly in saying no, I could have given it. Then you say, okay, actually take it. What does the child get the message? It's conflicted. Kid doesn't understand
Then
it.
mama can be bribed.
Kid
mama
doesn't
can be
understand it.
worked
Okay, or maybe a no can change into a yes, or a yes
Yeah.
can change into a no.
Mm.
So sometimes I say, you know what, I'm thinking about it. And there are times you say no to your child, and this is more for older parents or where the stage I'm at. And let's say I've said no to my child going to a party, or no to my child about, you cannot miss this class and go to this party. You've got to, and then you think it through and you're like, you know what, it's okay. And then you go back and say, you know what, you can go. I thought about this. This is the reason why I'm letting you go. And that's okay to change your mind as long as you have a good reason for it. Or you stick to it and you say, I know you're upset. I know you're disappointed, but this is the reason why I'm saying this. You have a test coming up, or you have to do this and you can't. The kid understands. See, when you come from a place of reason and you explain to your child, they accept. Your children
Yeah.
are still very little, so you need to be very consistent in your no's and your yeses. This is no. Like, for example, you cannot watch the iPad and eat, for example, or you cannot watch the TV and eat, and you're gradually moving your child to the dining table to sit and eat. Just because you're in a good mood, you can't say, you want to watch the iPad today and let's eat? The kid is confused. Is it allowed or is it not allowed?
But what if you're in like a horrible mood and you've had a really bad, stressful day and you just can't deal anymore? And then,
Go to her bedroom, take the pillow, sit on it with her, regulate yourself, calm yourself down, and come back into the situation. And it's all right to tell your child, I need a minute. Mama's having a bad day, or mama's got a headache, or mama's not feeling very well. Give me a minute. Can I just have my coffee or tea and then can I come back to you? Can you give me a minute? Can you sit with me for 2 minutes till I just calm down? Let your child see you regulate yourself as well. You're not expected to have a good day all the time.
Yeah.
You're not expected to be in control all the
Yeah.
time. But you are expected to be the adult all the time. And you are you are expected to kind of be able to rise above and show your child that you can.
Yeah.
You mentioned this earlier as well, right? The 3 C's and consistency being a really important one. Obviously, there are times that maybe a boundary that you have generally all the time and your kids are aware of a boundary, but a situation may make you want to change your mind for that particular situation, right? At what point can we expect our children to understand that, okay, you know what, this is an exception for whatever reason? Can you do that? Can you still have those breakaways?
Absolutely. And you should. I see the main thing is to communicate and to explain. What we do is we take it for granted. The children are treated like they are little minions, right? Like, we'll do this today. No, now we're not doing this. Explain. But you know what? I know we always sleep at 8 o'clock, but we're on a holiday. We're going to sleep late today. Or, I know we don't watch TV and eat, but let's watch a movie together. All of us together in bed watch. So it's an exception. You've explained yourself. It's not on a whim. Today, I feel like so it's happened. The kid is not confused. The kid understands you. What is the purpose of parenting? For us to understand each other. For the child to understand you. right? To
Right.
understand where you're coming from. And as, your children get older, let's say you say, you know what, I don't think that's a good idea. If your child understands that you have their best interest at heart, that you are fair as a parent, you're not using your position of power, you're being fair, you're truly understanding what is right for them, you will see no pushback even in the teen years. When you say, I don't think you should go to so and so place, most often the kid will be like, they may talk to you about it, but you will not have a pushback. But if you are in an autocratic zone where you say, you don't go because I said so, that becomes a challenge.
Correct.
So, today I've changed it because, you explain why.
Right.
The kid understands you, they understand your boundaries.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
And
Yeah.
boundaries have to always be age appropriate.
Of course.
You can't
Yes.
have the same boundary for a 2-year-old as you would for a 10-year-old. You can't have the same boundary for a teenager that you would have for a toddler. Boundaries are different.
Right.
You also have to explain to your child that we do have to brush our teeth. Like, there are certain
Yeah,
things
what
that...
about 2-year-olds that whack you in your face when you put the TV
oh
on?
my God.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you will start by saying, I'm putting the TV off.
You
Please
have 5
remember.
more minutes.
You see, they don't understand time. Time is not finite for a child. They don't, when you say you have 5 more minutes, they don't know what 5 more minutes even means. What is 5 minutes? They don't
Yeah.
know what that 5 minutes is a long time or a short time,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So you can say, like, for example, let's say they're watching Peppa Pig or Ben and Holly, or I don't know what kids are watching this age.
Same
Bluey.
things.
Okay, same things.
Yeah.
So, when, let's say, for example, when the credits start coming on, say now it's over, now we're going to put the TV off and now we're going to go to so-and-so place. And it is normal and natural to not want to stop doing something you enjoy. We're also like that.
Yeah.
So the kid is just expressing themselves in the immature way that they know, which is hitting, screaming, shouting. Say, but it's over. Switch it off. No hitting. I know you want to watch more TV. We'll watch again tomorrow. Come on, let's go and do this. That's it. So you're
Yeah.
going to have to transition. See, always transitions are tough. Children moving from one activity to another is very, very hard.
Yeah.
You will find that when they're younger, that's the most challenging.
Yeah.
Getting out of bed into the bathroom, from the bathroom to getting dressed, from there to breakfast, transitions are hard.
Yeah.
So we have to make the transition seamless for the child.
It's hard for us at this age also.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's very
Yes.
challenging.
But how do you do these transitions without threats and bribes and...
So, honestly,
Consistency.
you think of a threat is again something that seems very hollow, right?
Yeah.
You have to say something that you're going to follow through, or your child is not going to trust your word.
Correct.
You're going to say that, if you don't brush your teeth, I will take you to the dentist and he will do this. You're not going to do it. Talking rubbish, right? So you've got to say that if you don't brush your teeth, your mouth will smell and all your friends are going to see you and say, he's, appeal to something like that.
The tooth fairy is not going to want your rotten teeth.
I mean,
Your 2-year-old's not going to understand that.
So-
Oh, she's understanding. She's counting.
because she's seeing her older one,
Yeah.
but as in all
Yeah.
2-year-olds won't
yeah.
understand
So you
that.
just
Yeah.
need to kind of be, also relate to them at the age they are at. Also understand that it's not the end of the world if your child goes to bed one night without brushing their teeth.
Correct.
Please understand that it's okay to set certain things, but you also cannot be so rigid about it,
Yeah.
right? That you know what? Okay, I don't want to brush my teeth. There's a big fit and a fight, and I'll say, okay, don't want to brush your teeth. Let's just gargle our mouth. Let's just clean our mouth and go to sleep. That's the message you want to give your child. Go to bed on a particular day that is off. If you're going to sit there and shove that toothbrush into their mouth, it's going to be miserable for
Yeah.
you and for your child.
Yeah.
So you have to be particular that the fact is, you have to gargle your mouth, the little bit of toothpaste, spit it out, and okay, go to sleep. We'll brush tomorrow, and that's a promise, pinky promise, whatever your kid relates to at that age,
Yeah.
and they'll do it. The
So
next day.
one day I literally had to pick up my child in her pajamas without hairbrush, gone to the bathroom, nothing, because for 2 hours she refused to get out of bed and get ready. So I was like, you know what, we have to go, we're getting late, and I just picked her up and we went. And I was like, I don't know how she would have responded to that or how that would have made her feel, but I had to do it. So is that something wrong that I did, or do you think that it would have a negative effect on her, or...
See, honestly, I would lie if I said I've never maybe lost control or used
Yeah.
my power as my position as a parent to make my child do certain things. And let's say you picked her up and you took her. I think the manner in which you do it is very important, Because sometimes you may just pick her up and say, you know what, we really have to go. Come in your pajamas if you want to, and you pick up your child and you take them, and the child realizes that. The other way is to kind of physically overpower and threaten. Sometimes that happens, right? You tend to hold your child very hard, you yank them out of a space. That is more scary for a child.
Mm.
So, that is the difference. I'm not
Yeah.
like the picking up the child and saying, come on, let's go in the pajamas. I don't care. Come in your pajamas if you have to, but we have to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay? So then that's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
But if you yanked her out of bed or you scared her and picked her up and she was hysterical out of fear, that's not good.
No.
So that's,
Yeah, okay. So it's okay
as long
to do
as
that
in your
again.
mind
Yeah.
you are always, heart and head are in sync, you're okay. The minute you lose control and you are trying to use your position as an adult to overpower and to bully, you realize you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Are you teaching or are you punishing? Always ask yourself that. Am I using this option to teach my child or am I using this to punish my child?
That's a very good thing to keep in mind when you're disciplining, actually.
If you're punishing, it's obviously a punishment. And if you're teaching, it's discipline.
So, speaking of teaching, how do we teach our kids to share? Because sharing is something that doesn't come naturally to anybody. How do we get there with our kids? What do you do to help them, encourage them to be kinder, to be, to be fair, to share?
And also without sort of forcing it upon
Yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
Because we also want to respect that boundary that there are certain things that are yours and it's for you to choose.
So, to be honest, sharing is not a natural human trait, it's a learned quality. And I think you become more comfortable sharing when you are not threatened about losing the thing that you are sharing. Okay? So, why would I be reluctant to share something with you? Maybe because I feel you won't give it back to me. Maybe I feel I'll lose it after I give it to you. Maybe it won't be as nice when I get it back. What are the reasons that you don't want to share with anybody if you think about it? Right? So maybe you won't get that thing again. So what I tell parents, especially with young kids, is that when you host play dates, when you have people coming over, the first thing you need to do is ask your child, what would you like to share with your friends? What would you not like to share? We are in that very zen zone. Like, okay, come on, you got a new car, share it. It's not like you open your cupboards and tell even your sister, take whatever you want. Your sister will say,
No.
I want a dress. You will pick out 5 dresses and say, you can pick from these.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? So how come we're not using the same standard for our child?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Like you have all these toys. What would you like to share? And if your child says, I want to share only these, okay, we'll play with these. These are going to be in the cupboard or these will be in my room. You don't have to share it. So the child is not feeling threatened.
Mm.
The child is not feeling forced to do something that's not coming naturally to them. So
Yeah.
sharing is something that you will start doing when you start having more good experiences.
Yeah.
Okay, I've played with my friend. I've played with the car. He gave it back to me. Life's good. But I gave this car. The kid didn't give it back to me, or he broke my toy, and I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
So it's experiences. So you've got to kind of control the experiences initially to make sure that they are good experiences. You have to also know who the other children are that you are inviting over, whether they are gentle with things, whether they are not gentle with things. And then you decide how you want to structure the play date and the sharing.
This is very interesting.
So,
Yes.
sort of follow up to this, right? Obviously, now we're talking about people coming into your home and not sharing with, outsiders. That's fine. Easy to control. But
Yeah, but-
when you have 2 kids
Yeah.
in the house and their siblings, you can't buy 2 of everything,
Mhm.
right? As a parent, you need to teach them that, okay, this is your turn and then it can be your brother's turn. And that's not always so easy because there's so many fights that happen.
We want to play with it first.
Exactly.
I
How
want to
do
play
you-
with it when it's brand
had
new.
it
Yeah,
longer.
yeah.
Yeah.
She had it first yesterday or he had
Yeah.
it first yesterday. How do you navigate that?
So that you just have to be fair about it. That see, we all live together. We all share things together. Like see, Dad and I share the same space. We share whatever it is you want to, explain.
Examples.
That we are in one room. We share everything. You all are in one room. You all share everything.
Mm.
You all need to realize that it belongs to both of you. So you both need to take care of it. So let's say he had it first yesterday. Oh, that's right. Today's your turn. Right? And now remember that you got it today. Your brother's waiting. So in a few minutes, or when they're very young, they don't understand time. You can say, I'm setting an alarm or I'm putting the a buzzer on. The minute it goes, time to change the toy.
Right.
And sometimes the kid will say, but I want 1 minute more. I want to Say, okay, let's wait for, give him a minute more. And you will wait with the other child. Say, okay, minute's up now. Give it.
So it's okay to set those timers and have that.
Absolutely. Because they're very young. They don't understand
Right,
it.
yeah,
right.
And human nature is what? We want
Everything.
everything, right? We want to possess. And they're very young. They don't understand it. It's very normal to say, I want it. And I don't want to give it. So you have to understand that that is a normal feeling. But we've got to move a step up to understand that while you want it, someone may want it too.
Right.
So it's got to be shared.
Very fair. Very, very fair. But even talking about these sort of skills, okay, I need to learn to share because, it's a good thing. Even apologizing, how very often we just say sorry, you got to apologize for that. How are you
Yeah.
teaching them? How do you teach them rather empathy or actual remorse in a situation?
Okay, another bubble to burst.
You
Empathy is also something
It's a learn.
that you
skill.
will only have after you have been through something yourself. Because when you say empathy is walking in somebody else's shoes, you have to first have experienced it to empathize.
can't. Of course.
When you have not experienced it, it is sympathy.
Correct.
I feel bad for you,
Hmm.
but I don't really know what you're going through. But I've been through it and I know how bad it feels, and therefore I understand what you're going through is a completely different thing.
Yeah.
So when your child has actually been through something, they understand it. So let's say your child has hit somebody and you say, go and say sorry. You will make your child say sorry because you're going to say that you hurt them.
Mm.
That was not nice and you need to say sorry because you hurt their feelings. That's it.
Mm.
Do that.
Okay.
And then let's say the next time somebody's hit your child
Mm.
and then your child is going to apologize. Remember how it hurt you? Even he's feeling hurt.
Mm.
That's how you will relate to that. So
Okay, I
sometimes
have a
it's
very, very controversial question. So this one time, okay, my older one was going through a phase of hitting other people and other things in me. And it was getting really bad. And I wanted her to stop, but she wasn't understanding what she was doing because she had never been hit and felt that pain. So one day she comes and she has this mic in her hand and she bops me on the head with it really hard. Now, it was me, it was okay. If she had done that to my younger one, it would have been quite scary. So I got mad at her and I said, that really hurts. Why don't you take that mic and bop yourself and see how it feels? Was that a wrong thing to do?
did she do it?
Like lightly.
So she didn't really hurt herself.
No.
Okay. So honestly, certain behaviors which are physical in nature, which are more like a impulse. Okay, that impulse to just hit or the impulse to just strike or to grab or to snatch. Those are things that we sometimes do without thinking it through. It's
Yeah.
an impulsive action. So those are ones that you could actually restrain your child by getting down to their eye level, holding their hand and saying, no, don't hit. That hurt me. I'm taking that away. If you don't know, the mic is for singing, it's not for hitting. If you're going to use it to hit, I'm taking it away.
But you tried all that and that didn't work.
We have a toy jail in our house. There are some toys that go in the toy jail.
Very interesting. Your home sounds really interesting.
I mean, a toy jail is just a shelf in my cupboard, but there are things that go in the toy jail for 2 days because they just can't use it appropriately.
Yeah.
Sorry, the toy
Yeah.
needs to go.
We have the top of the cupboard.
Yeah, same. Where they can't reach and climb up.
And sometimes sharing between siblings, if you always tell them, if you can't play with it together,
Yeah,
then I'm taking it away.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. It's all right.
Yeah.
If it's causing you all to fight, then the problem is the toy. Let me take it away.
Exactly.
And then there's a lot of inevitable loudness,
That's okay.
which is
Like I said, you can't control everything. You do you. Let them
yeah.
scream, shout, yell.
You
try
do
to
you,
block it
and
out.
very often your partner also does
Them.
him. And then there's very different ways that you sort of approach a situation or, parenting. And one person, in my case, my husband, is always the fun one. And I'm maybe sort of the stricter, more disciplinarian sort of parent. And how do parents deal with that when you're approaching kids differently? How do you be on the same team without having a meltdown yourself in front of the kids?
Okay, so I don't know whether I mentioned it, but I've started writing a column for Mumbai Mirror. It's a weekly column, and my column last week was exactly this. It was
Okay.
called Good Cop, Bad Cop,
Ah,
where I tell all parents that that good cop, bad cop is a very bad idea at home. Because good cop, bad cop means that one person becomes the fun parent and one is the disciplinarian.
Correct.
And what happens is one gets taken for granted. And with one, there is so much of fear of repercussion that the respect is superficial almost.
Mm.
So there's no good cop, bad cop. It's good behaviors, bad behaviors.
Yeah.
And whether it is you or whether it is your husband, the rules are the same. The child will get the same yes and the same no. Now, obviously, the way you do it is going to be based on your personality. Okay, maybe as a person, I may shout at my kid and say no. My husband may say gently. But it is just that no matter what the child is doing, that no will be the consistent one.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
I'll say no and he'll say yes.
Yeah.
That is the problem. So you need to discuss boundaries, discuss values together, and then as a team present it. So whether you're at home or not at home, whether your husband's there or not there, the rules remain the same. And that's how your children thrive, because children actually thrive in predictability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
don't thrive in unpredictability. As much as we think that, okay, you know what, I'll give in and I'll be the fun parent or I'll be the better parent, it doesn't work. It actually is more detrimental. So children need consistency, they need predictability, and as long as the no's and the yeses are the same, it's fine.
Even especially if, your kid comes and asks you for something and then you say no, and then you're like, oh, I'll go tell dad you said that. And he'll say, no, mama said no, so you can't do it. I mean, that's not okay either,
That's
right?
not okay.
Yeah. I hope my husband watches this episode. Yeah.
But something you talk about a lot is toxic positivity, right? Can you tell us and our listeners what do you mean by toxic positivity and why is it toxic?
So anything that is done in extreme is not good for you. And even positivity, that it's not normal or natural to be positive all the time. So
Yeah.
when there are people who tell you, oh, you fractured your leg, be thankful it wasn't both your legs. I mean, you're upset your leg is fractured, you're allowed to be upset. Right? So that over zen, over positive sometimes can be very toxic, because what it does is it makes the person who's feeling bad about something or who's not able to be positive at that moment feel, am I a bad person? Am I bad for feeling bad about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not able to be grateful right now. Does that make me a terrible human being?
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about great gratitude and mindfulness, and those are all great concepts, but we cannot be mindful all the time.
Yeah.
We cannot be grateful all
Correct.
the time. We cannot be positive all the time.
Correct.
So when somebody is telling you that, so-and-so's passed away and, but it's so much better than, it's not better. Person's passed away, I'm missing them, I'm grieving, I'll look on the positive side later. So when people are overdoing the positivity, when you tell your child, for example, oh, it's okay if so-and-so said this to you, maybe they are feeling like that. You're in that very zen mode all the time. It's not what the other person needs to hear. It's not what the other person needs to kind of restore and repair themselves. So yes, you have to definitely come back to positivity from a negative experience, but the manner in which it's done is different for different people, right? We go through certain stages of emotions, we go through certain stages of feelings, and you've got to allow your child or yourself to feel all those things and yes, get back to positivity. But it's not a switch on and switch off button, right? So that's what I mean by toxic positivity. When someone is pushing positivity through everything, you're having a bad experience, but look on the bright side.
Yeah.
That feels a little bit, sometimes it's unnatural, it doesn't feel authentic. And it makes you feel like, oh my God, I'm a bad person. I'm not seeing the bright side right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask about this also because I saw your post on it and it made me realize that I was being that toxic positivity with my kids because, say they lost a football match or they lost something that they,
Was important to them.
yeah, was important to them. And yeah, I would say, okay, yeah, it's not fun to lose, but you just keep practicing and you'll get better. And I would use that even for myself, in front of them. I participated in a paddle tournament. I didn't win. And I would tell them, but it's okay. I'm just going to practice harder and come back to it, right? Without focusing on what they were feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I know
you
it
worked
sucks
really
to lose,
hard and you lost. And I know you're feeling disappointed. And okay, come on, mama's going to give you a hug. Does that make you feel better?
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
something like that. And then say, okay, now we'll try. Then you use that. I'm not saying that you don't move to positivity, but you allow the person to feel what they're feeling first, feel validated that, okay, I'm feeling bad about it, not
Yeah.
feel bad that they are feeling a negative emotion.
Correct.
Because negative emotions are also very, very important. They
Yeah.
teach us who we are.
Yeah. Like
And-
letting them actually feel that.
Yeah.
You're
Feel
right.
bad.
Yeah.
That's also the
something.
tightrope of parenting. Now you want to take away all the
Correct.
negativity from them. You don't want them to
Don't
feel
be a
bad.
snowplow.
I'm just so like, what do I have to be mindful of now? There's so many things.
Acknowledge it's a shit show and move on.
Just like, I just have to keep like a separate bank for therapy for my kids for later. But I don't think anything I do is going to make a difference.
Some of us save for college, some of us save for therapy.
Yeah. Just send them to college to become a therapist themselves. So, speaking of therapy, when would a parent know that they need additional help, like coaching or, therapy? Or,
When a situation is happening repeatedly and you've tried everything and it's not working, or you're not able to understand what it is that you're doing, your best attempts, your heart's in the right place, you're doing everything right, and it's just not working, it's always nice to get an objective, unbiased view. Because when we are working with our children,
Mm.
I mean, there is no relationship that brings in our emotions more than parent and child, right? They are the ones who can really bring out the best, the worst, and everything in us, right? The emotions get completely heightened.
yeah.
And when we are emotional, we are unable to see clearly.
Hmm.
So when you take a perspective of somebody who has nothing to gain from a situation, or somebody who's objective, or somebody who can, guide you or put a certain thing into perspective for you, why not? And I just feel there are so many resources out there today.
Correct.
Why not seek help? There is nothing wrong with it. In fact, I feel it's more courageous to seek help than to act like you have it all under control. So,
But there's a big stigma attached to it, I think.
Yeah, like I said, right?
Yeah.
You feel that maybe you're less than. You feel like, oh, did I fail?
but if you
Shame.
don't look at it that
Right.
way and you're going to say that, you know what, like, for example, you're wearing glasses. Why are you wearing glasses?
Because
What-
you can't see.
You can't
without
see.
them.
I mean, what's the big deal? There's a tool that's going to help you see better.
Correct.
You're not going to say, oh my God, what are people going to think of me? I can't see. It doesn't work like that, right? So
Yeah.
why are we so ready to take help when it's something physical?
Yeah.
But when it is something psychological, when it is something emotional, something mental, we are very, very afraid of it. But that is who we are. We're not only the physical,
yeah.
right? We are actually more the psychological, more the emotional, more our thoughts and our ways than it is physical. So it's very important for us to be secure that, you know what, I'm seeking help because help's available.
Yeah.
I'm seeking help because I think I need it.
Yeah, but for I guess a lot of mums, like the one who slammed the phone on you, it's a big judgment on your own character when you need to seek help for something, when you fall short of yourself,
So, I learned from that phone being slammed down on me, where I've now, if a parent calls me and says, do I bring my child? And I say no, because I'm going to give you the tips and tricks to get your child to do what you need them to do. And then parents are willing to come in there. But if you feel that you are coming in because you need help, immediately you feel defensive, or you
Yeah.
feel like,
Correct.
oh my God, I'm lesser than. Here,
Right.
somebody is going to partner you and help you get the relationship or get your child to do what you need them to do.
And that's what you're there for. You're not
Yeah.
judging the parent at all.
I'm not.
You are
I'm here
actually
to I'm here
uplifting
to
them.
help
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
empower them. And if I honestly, it would be so much easier for me to work with the child directly,
Yeah.
right? But the idea is to empower families to actually be confident. It's like that coach, right? Like I always say, once the floats are off, you can swim. If you want to
Yeah.
learn a different technique or a different kind of stroke, you can come back to me.
Yeah.
But you know how to swim already. You're not afraid of the water anymore. Go for it,
Yeah.
And then you figure it out with your child.
You're like the wind beneath our wings.
Coach. That's the best word.
Yeah.
Coach. No, but that's exactly how I think what you said just now is the crux of it. Like you walk with the parents to teach the parents to walk with the child.
So, the analogy of why coach is used. A coach doesn't play the game.
Yeah.
Okay? You'll never find a coach in the middle of the field playing that game.
Yeah.
They've taught the players what to do, and they may be in the sidelines, guiding you, reminding you, but they don't play the game. And a coach is what I am to the parent. And a parent is also their child's coach. You have to eventually teach your child everything, but you can't play the game for them.
Yeah.
You can't jump in there and take over their play dates, or jump in there and take over a situation they're having with their peers. You've got to empower them or teach them how to manage it. And you're always there guiding, supporting, cheerleading, or whatever it is that you're doing from the sidelines.
So I want to ask you about something, Pia, that my daughter faces in school. She finds it a little tough to stand up for herself. A few weeks back, she had changed her ECA, and when she went in, one of the kids told her, "You're not in this class. Go." And it happened repeatedly for a few weeks, and she sort of didn't find the courage to tell that kid or even the teacher that I'm supposed to be in this class, but I'm not. And but at home she has no trouble speaking her mind. In fact, must have told her off at the breakfast table the other day, and she just turned around and she goes, "I hate you, and you can't say that to me." I think I must have said, "Now, time's up. It's 8 o'clock. Table's going in the kitchen. We have to leave." So angry, and then I lost it, and I was like, "You can't talk to me like that." That was my loud, stern voice, and So how do you teach them to sort of stand up for themselves in situations that matter and not sort of answer back to me at home, to my husband even?
So it's very, very important to teach our child how to be assertive and how to stand up for themselves. But if you think about it, when you are teaching your child to stand up, to appear, we're constantly telling our children that, what, if you don't like this, tell your friend to stop. Don't be afraid. Go and tell the teacher you don't understand something. So we are constantly empowering our children to speak their minds, to be assertive. But I find more and more that parents want their children to be assertive and stand up to everybody else but them. Okay, so that is, I think, the hypocrisy of parenting, where we want our child to be empowered with everybody but not with us. So it's very important for the child to be able to practice with us at home. The assertiveness, the practice comes at home. And it's a very fine line between being assertive and being aggressive. So teaching the child that, you can stand up for yourself, you can say no, even to me, but you have to be respectful, your body language, your choice of words, that is important. So that is where we teach our child. And I just feel that the safest place for a child to practice is with us at home. And that requires us to be very, very secure as parents, where we don't feel offended if our child says something to us, but we just redirect, correct. Like you said, your child was very angry with you and was shouting at you. You can say that you can be upset with me, but you can't shout at me. So you're saying that you can be upset, you can express yourself, but right words, right body language, right tone of voice, they can't hit you, they can't kick, they can't spit, all of those things. So you are teaching your child how to be assertive, and the practice has to happen at home. So that's what I'd like to say to all parents. Actually, allow your child to practice on you.
So, but can you give us... so 2 questions. First of all, at what age does this start? And when they actually understand that, they can stand up to you and to use words correctly. And can you give us an example of how this works? So like, if a child wanted to stand up to their mom, how could they do it? Or because I don't know, at least for me, it's not a natural situation that I have seen growing up. And I don't know if it's happened in my house and I've not acknowledged it.
So see, honestly, I think that the way parenting used to be and the way parenting is today is very different. We are enabling our children in so many ways that maybe we were not enabled because life was very different back then.
Correct.
And our parents did what I think their parents did, right?
Yeah.
So we just have to kind of move with the times. Our children are in an environment that is so much more dynamic, so much more exposure, that they need to learn where to say no, where to say yes, what their own boundaries are. And that happens with practice at home, and it starts at a very young age. There's no time for it. There's no switch on and switch off. So when your 2-year-old is, let's say, spitting, and you say no spitting, there is your boundary. Okay? So it will start like that. And maybe as your child gets older and communication or vocabulary builds and develops, you can then explain to your child that, you're angry, you can say no, you can say stop, but no spitting, no hitting. Maybe they don't know how to say stop. I don't want you to do that. So they do whatever comes naturally to them as a physical instinct. And you will initially start by just curbing that physical instinct, and then gradually, as the child's social emotional development goes up and the child's maturity comes in, you will explain or
Okay.
you will replace that negative behavior by a positive behavior, which is still expressing their dislike for something. If you don't like it, you can say, I don't like it. You don't have to spit it out.
Okay.
You don't like it, say, I don't like it, mama. And mama will let you take it out or whatever. You teach them an appropriate way of doing something.
Yeah. Or if you don't like something I'm doing, like if you don't like me tickling you.
You can say, mama, stop. And
Yeah.
mama has to stop.
Yeah.
Mama can't be having so much of fun. Mama continues tickling and then the
Yeah.
kid starts kicking. Well, that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get carried away and we don't respect our child's boundaries.
Correct.
We want our boundaries to be respected, but we don't. We take for granted the boundaries of children because they're very little. We think it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So the minute they realize that, okay, stop means stop, and you've stopped, say, okay, mama is stopping if you don't like it. Similarly, when they're doing something to you, mama said stop.
Yeah.
They understand that stop is okay. It's how you say stop. You can say stop in a warm and firm tone, or you can scream stop. So the choice is yours, which way you want to respond, and always respond with warmth and firmness rather than aggression or any, exaggerated
Yeah.
way.
That's so interesting. You say the same word. So, this term, I don't care, right? A couple of years ago is when my boy started using I don't care. And, once or twice they must have said it in a very rude way. So I had told them that, that's not nice. That's not a nice thing to say. And literally this past weekend, my husband asked me something, oh, what do you want to eat? And I said, oh, I don't really care. And they were sitting in the back of the car, like these police, this thing, they said, that's a bad word. And I had to finally explain to them. And it's so hard to explain that actually it's not a bad word, but it's
The way
how
you
you
say
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I say shut up, like when I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God. And they're like, you can't say shut up. And I was like, no, it's the way you say it. And she's like,
Yeah.
can I say it? I was like, no, you cannot say
Yeah,
it.
very
Let's not just use this word.
tricky situations.
I think the main thing is to teach our children that it's the how that's very important.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with being angry,
right.
but how you express that angry, we have a choice.
Matters.
Correct.
Okay, there's no problem being shocked about something, but how you react is a problem, right? So it's just those kinds of things.
Right.
The tone of voice, teaching them body language and tone of voice. So if your child tells you, "Mama, that's not fair," versus "Mama, that's not fair,"
Right.
it's up to the child to understand that a kid saying, "Mama, I don't think that's fair."
Yeah.
Why would you say that to me? Like I'm saying with my kids, maybe at this age,
Right.
like they would say that, that's not fair. Why are you saying that?
Right.
Or that's not what I meant, and you're making it to be something else. You explain
Correct.
how and why.
Correct.
It's the tone of voice, it's the body language, it's all those things. The word is not bad in itself.
Correct,
It's how it's
correct.
used.
It's allowing your children to challenge you and to police you and
Of course,
not
and they
taking
should.
offense
And
to that. Okay, got
Because
it.
it's a
They should.
two-way
Understood.
street. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And, talking about these personality traits that we're trying to develop for our children, right? Talking about now self-esteem. We obviously want our kids to be growing up with having good self-esteem. Unfortunately today, and this is obviously maybe not applicable to our kids, they're still young, but talking about the effects of social media and how it impacts a child's self-esteem. You have older kids, you have teenagers. In your opinion, and I know it's relative, when should a child have access A to a phone and B to social media?
Okay, it's actually very funny that you asked because literally this morning my post on Instagram is talking about exactly this.
Okay.
I am not a parent who is anti the phone or anti social media because the reality is that is their reality today. Okay, the world has become a smaller place because of social media, and it's not bad. As long as you teach your child to use it with maturity, with moderation, and to know what to consume. There's so much out there. You have to know
Yeah.
what to consume and what not to. And I think the decision about when to give your child a phone really depends on your child's maturity.
Mm.
There's no time that you put it in their hand, really. But I would say the later the better. And of course, your child needs to contact you when they're not being, ushered by staff. They're not going alone. They're going alone now to parties. They're going alone to classes. Then you need to contact them. You can give your child the phone. And not giving social media is not the answer. Teaching your child how to use it safely, that is the answer. Because they're going to find a way to watch it, right? And obviously the way social media is, it finds its way. You can block anything you want and a kid is going to find a way to access it. So it's more important to teach your child how to access things and be safe about it rather than not have it at all. Because the minute something's a forbidden fruit, it becomes more desirable.
Right. So say a parent, is a little bit confused. At what age do you think they can come to you and maybe seek some help in figuring out, because they're unsure whether it's appropriate for their child to have a phone or social media,
Or safe.
and how do you teach your child how to consume, what's out there safely? At what age can a parent come to you to seek
So,
that help?
honestly, there are parents who've given their children phones as young as 8 years old.
Okay.
Okay. And some haven't given their children phones at 13 or 14. So I don't think there's a particular age. Let's say a parent wants to give it to their
Right.
child and they're not sure, come and ask.
Okay.
And it's as simple as understanding why their child wants it so bad and why they don't want to give it to their child. So
Got
in
it.
that conversation itself, the parent will have the answers,
Got it.
right? Because the minute you realize, okay, you know what, my kid is asking for it. Is my kid asking because his entire peer group has it? Am I giving it because my child travels alone? And sometimes it's okay to give it if your peer group has it, because there are multiple things that happen there as well.
Right.
Right? You get left out of groups, you don't know what's happening. Kids
Yeah.
are, depending on the age of the child, they were like, a lot of parents say, I'm not giving you the WhatsApp. Your kids can access, your friends can access you through my WhatsApp. Now it's unrealistic that a group of children is going to want a parent on a WhatsApp group, right? So then they will
Start excluding.
start
them.
excluding you.
Correct.
So you need to understand it's not so simple as no black or white. You need to understand the entire dynamic. Also, your child, are they going to have the ability to control themselves, to moderate? Are they going to get addicted to it? You need to understand your child's personality and then temper it and give it to your child with boundaries, with
Right.
rules.
So
But-
basically, if you're ever in a position as a parent that you're thinking about it, it's a good time to
Of
reach out
course,
to you.
absolutely.
Okay.
The safety aspect with social media, where now kids are getting bullied on social media, they're getting ragged, teased. I've heard of so many incidents happening. It's a difficult space to navigate because it's new for the kids, and parents it's outdated for the parents. As in parents are outdated with everything that's happening. So, do you think that it's important for parents to come in and kind of understand what it is that you're giving your kids before actually giving it to your kids, whether it's social media, whether it's the phone, whether it's something new that pops up tomorrow?
So honestly, things are going to keep coming up. And it's important for us as parents to move with the times, to try to understand the world our children are living in. We can't be back in the world we were raised for. It was a safer place.
Yeah.
It was a less complicated place.
Yeah.
Let's say you got bullied in your playground or you got bullied in school, it ended there.
Yeah.
Today a child gets bullied, it goes onto social media, it goes from school to school, it gets circulated. So teaching your child also about a digital footprint that they leave.
Yeah.
Teaching your child how to be safe, how to put something. I always tell my kids, put whatever's out there that you don't mind anyone seeing. The minute you are going to worry that, oh my God, if this so-and-so sees, I'll get into trouble, that's your clue not to do it. Because today you may not want me to see it, tomorrow it may be somebody else who doesn't see it, or somebody may circulate it.
Correct.
So don't put what you don't want anybody else to see. Don't say what you don't want anyone else to repeat. So it's just teaching them how to be safe in different environments. You can't take the environment away. You've got to teach them to navigate it safely, not to chat with people they don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So when they are playing games like this Roblox or Fortnite or whatever, my rule with my kids has always been you will play with people you know in the real world.
Yeah.
There may be exciting people to play with in a virtual world, but no playing
No.
with somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just about teaching them how to be safe, having those boundaries. And I would say that, you know what, if I see that you've chatted with somebody that you don't know, I'm not letting you have it because it's not safe for you.
Yeah.
So you give them a chance to kind of explore within the boundaries you've set, give them a chance to stick to that. They break the trust, give them another chance. And then if they cannot have the control, you may take it away or you may give it with more supervision.
Okay.
Fair.
Very fair.
Very scary what we have to look forward to.
Yeah. This has been actually super, super. I mean, I know we've obviously not even covered everything that
drop
comes
in
with
the ocean.
parenting.
I don't
right?
think you can. It's
yeah,
like so
exactly,
many things.
exactly. But I think it's really got us to think about our actions as a parent on a day-to-day basis, our reactions as a parent on a day-to-day basis, which I think is the most important thing, right?
Sit and assess ourselves.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Look inwards.
Head and
Right?
heart together.
But if there was,
Repair and restore.
yeah,
I
Repair
tell
and
all
if there was
parents that
one
always-
advice that you could give parents before we wrap this up, what would it be?
Blanket advice.
Blanket advice.
Oops. Okay, blanket advice is one, follow your instinct and follow your gut because nobody knows your child better than you do. Okay, there's so much out there, whether it's research, information, professionals. Sometimes all that confuses you, but your gut will tell you that no, this is what's right for my child, and follow your gut.
So this has been incredible, Pia. You've given us a shift in perspective, the way we think, the way we should respond rather than react as parents. And yeah, excited to parent my kids today.
But I'm glad. I would just say mission accomplished. I think my only goal as a parent coach or to enter this space is I want parents to enjoy parenting as much as I do. Because I think no relationship fulfills me or energizes me more than being with my kids. I don't think anyone knows me better than my kids know me. So, and I would love everyone to experience the same thing. So, whatever I can share and help parents with, that's my goal.
I think it's so incredible that there's someone like you here in Bombay. Thank you for coming and talking us through our fears and doubts. And I hope this has helped everyone who's listening in. If there's more questions that you have for Pia, we're going to share her contact details and you can get in touch with her. And
also read her Saturday Mumbai Mirror
Yeah.
column.
Yes, please do. It's called The Parent Playbook. And the tagline is growing up together because that's what it is.
that's what it is.
Our children
you're
are not growing
as a
alone. We
family
need to grow
together.
with them.
Yeah.
True.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being
Thank you.
here.